tonight I thought what we could do is talk about your beginnings as an actor, a young James Caan. Your first film, your first big star with a film, first guy you worked with, first woman you worked with, the big stars.
If you think you've never heard of James Caan, we're sure you've seen him on your screen more than a few times. He's played iconic roles in movies like Elf and The Godfather, and he will always be remembered for his legendary presence on screen, among other things. This is why it was so painful to learn that he passed away just recently. But there's more behind his life and death, and we now know what really happened. So what did his family finally reveal about his death? There are many great actors, but one as great as James is hard to come by often. He's mostly known for his role as Sonny Corleone in the original Godfather movie, but we can't limit him to only that role. He's done great work throughout over 6 decades and has left a legacy behind him that we will always remember him by. But who would have thought that his original life plan never included acting? James was born in a Jewish family in the Bronx and grew up next to his father selling kosher meat together. He had a bright future ahead of him from the very beginning. He was class president and an athlete. After all, he had to work hard to avoid being a kosher butcher his whole life. James studied economics at Michigan State University, where he found his passion for football. Yes, his first goal in life was to become a professional football player, but sadly he was too small and couldn't make the team. But there's always a bright side. Since he gave up on his football dream, he transferred to Hofstra University, where he studied theater, and this is where his acting career had its jumpstart. James began his career on the stage, where his debut was playing La Ronde in 1960. It didn't take him long before he also made his debut on Broadway only 1 year after. James was moving in the industry surprisingly fast. So soon he finally got his first real film role playing Randall O'Connell in Lady in a Cage. While he was studying theater, he met one of his classmates who would soon change his life and career. That classmate was Francis Ford Coppola, and the two of them became friends. Francis became a film director, so James starred in many of his movies, starting with The Rain People in 1969 and then Brian's Song in 1971. He played the role of Brian Piccolo, who was a professional football player that was diagnosed with cancer at the peak of his football career. This movie went on to secure him an Emmy nomination for his great work playing Brian. But James's life was changed when Francis cast him in the role of Sonny in The Godfather, which is a role that James was identified with for the rest of his life. It's unquestionable that his death scene from the movie is still one of the most memorable scenes to this day. His success in this movie led to many other new job opportunities and even an Oscar nomination. Although he accepted many opportunities that came his way, James also said no to a few roles he was offered. One of them was for the war movie Apocalypse Now, which turned out to be a big success. Some other big names he turned down were Superman, Love Story, Kramer vs. Kramer, and MASH. One time, James even gave directing a try, and he directed and starred in the movie Hide in Plain Sight. It took him 2.5 years to make, after which James said he never wanted to direct again. During 1982 and 1987, James took a little break from acting because of some personal issues. After his sister died from leukemia, his life went a little downhill, but he needed the money, which was why he decided to go back to acting and playing in many movies, including one of his biggest box office hits, playing the lead role in Misery. He played in Cinderella Liberty, The Gambler, and his personal favorite movie, Thief. If you've been living under a rock and don't know any of these movies, you have for sure seen him in the holiday hit movie Elf. This was definitely a new experience for him, and he reached and entertained a whole new generation and audience successfully.
I love him and love it! I don't care who knows it!
Buddy, not now. Can you please go back to the pit? I'll come visit you in a little while, okay?
I didn't know you had elves working here.
We're not surprised about the love and adoration James received throughout his life, considering the variety of roles he played. This is why his death shocked and upset everyone, especially since he was on his feet, still working until the last days of his life. On July 6, 2022, his death was announced by his family through Twitter. It is with great sadness that we inform you of the passing of Jimmy on the evening of July 6th. The statement read, "The family appreciates the outpouring of love and heartfelt condolences and asks that you continue to respect their privacy during this difficult time." It was revealed that the cause behind his death was a combination of heart problems. It was a mix of heart attack and coronary artery disease that sadly ended his iconic life after 82 years. His impact on his fans and friends was made obvious after his death. Everyone was sharing their condolences and remembering him and his great impact on the film industry. His friend Francis Ford Coppola, who gave James some of his biggest opportunities, said, "Jimmy was someone who stretched through my life longer and closer than any motion picture figure I've ever known. From those earlier times working together on The Rain People and throughout all the milestones of my life, his films and the many great roles he's played will never be forgotten," he said. He will always be my old friend from Sunnyside, my collaborator, and one of the funniest people I've ever known. His co-star from The Godfather, Al Pacino, also talked about how important James was for him. Jimmy was my fictional brother and my lifelong friend. It's hard to believe that he won't be in the world anymore because he was so alive and daring. A great actor, a brilliant director, and my dear friend. I loved him. Gonna miss him. But it seems that Mr. James Caan had quite the bad boy reputation, and some new things are starting to unfold now after his death. So let's see what was revealed about the part of his life no one has ever talked about. Out of many things, James Caan was a man who enjoyed life. He lived a full life and managed to give almost everything a try. And James tried many other new things aside from acting as well. He tried boxing, bull riding, and even motorcycle riding. And of course, he was quite the ladies' man as well. He loved women, which is why he was married 4 times. None of the marriages lasted, though. To get over my divorce, I got a prescription to live at the Playboy Mansion for a while. There were a ton of girls over there, and well, I'm sorry, but I liked them, he said. Hookers? Well, I never paid for them, you know? I just gave them all the cocaine they wanted. A bunch of these guys had trash magazines at their houses, and all they'd want to know was who was I betting? What was I drinking? Who was I screwing? Anything but the movie. But despite all of this, he was always very family-oriented, as his family revealed. His son Scott said, "He's always been there for me no matter what. My dad is a good example of someone who digs into life and goes, yeah, that tore my heart out, but I'm going to try again," Scott said. Also stating that his family was more important than his work. "My dad is probably one of the most interesting people I've ever met," Scott said. Since James's family was so important to him, it's no surprise that when his sister died from leukemia, his whole life fell apart. He went off the rails. He started doing drugs and even stopped acting in movies for about 5 years. "Barbara was like my best friend. When she died, passion became this whole thing with me. That's what I loved about my sister. She was just so passionate about whatever she did. I was on an extremely destructive kick. My sister had died of cancer, and I was just angry, raging at the world. Getting high and partying seemed like the best option," he said. "I started doing cocaine, which is like a death sentence. That lasted a while. But after James lost all his savings because of a bad accountant, he was left broke, which is why he was forced to quit all drugs and go back to work. After that long break, it was a little hard for him to find new roles since studios were a little hesitant because of his bad reputation those past years. But he managed to get back on his feet really quickly. Despite all the great roles he played, he still never managed to win an Oscar, and he was a little bitter about it. "I really do wish I had an Academy Award," he said in an interview. "But listen, here's what you gotta know. Number 1, anybody who gets cancer in a movie automatically wins the Academy Award that year. Number 2, I sound like I'm bitter, and I am. However, winning an Oscar doesn't define how successful he was. He gave his all for these movies, and that's what matters. But the end of his life found him in a crisis again, because his last divorce was a messy one, and according to some documents it left him broke, which is why he was taking even small and bad roles in order to survive. James also had stacks of medical bills and health problems that he couldn't afford to pay for. All of this left him in poor health, so even though he did what he loved until he died, his last few years weren't the happiest. James was even worried that these bad movies he was playing in were going to destroy the reputation that he'd worked on for years. His dream had always been to act in one last great film before he died. He wanted to leave one last legacy while he was still physically able to and fulfill his dream. And it seemed that James was on the verge of completing that goal. Right before he died, the Safdie brothers, Josh and Benny, said that they were considering James for a role in a new movie. After Sandler first rejected us, our instinct was to cast James Caan as Howard. It was always Sandman's part, but in the air somewhere is a version with Jimmy Caan, as seen here in 2011. Rest in peace. He hasn't left our screens ever since he started acting, and he won't be disappearing from them anytime soon either. His death left everyone sad, but at least we have a wide variety of his movies to watch whenever we start missing him. James left a legacy behind him, and he will always be remembered for it. We just wish we would have gotten to see him in one last movie before he passed away. If you liked this video, make sure to watch this other one too.